Imagine coming home after a long day, expecting warmth, love, and safety within the four walls of your house. But what if the very people meant to protect you are the ones planning your demise? What if the arms that once cradled you turn into instruments of death? This isn't just a nightmare, it's a horrifying reality for some unfortunate souls who learned too late that their own parents were their worst enemies. What if, as you drift off to sleep, feeling secure in your bed, the person watching over you is silently deciding when to end your life? What if the whispers you hear at night aren't ghosts, but plans being made in the next room, plans where you are the victim? Some children are born into love, only to die in terror at the hands of those who gave them life. The scariest part? They never see it coming. Their last moments are filled with confusion, pleading eyes searching for love in the faces of their killers, but there is no love left. There is only death. Tonight, we bring you the terrifying real-life case of the Watts family, where what seemed like a picture-perfect household became the scene of an unspeakable crime. Chris Watts, a seemingly loving husband and father, harbored dark secrets that eventually led to the cold-blooded murder of his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two innocent daughters, Bella and Celeste. Shanann was an ambitious woman, full of life, who adored her family. She often shared happy family moments on social media, painting the image of an ideal family. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Chris had begun an affair and wanted a way out. Instead of a divorce, he chose something much darker: murder. One evening, Shanann arrived home late from a business trip. The house was quiet. Too quiet. As she stepped inside, she had no idea that she was walking into her death. Chris, waiting in the shadows, pounced on her. A struggle ensued, but she never had a chance. He strangled her in cold blood. But the horror didn't end there. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, woke up. They saw their father moving their mother's lifeless body. Fear gripped them, but they didn't understand what was happening. "Daddy? What's wrong with Mommy?" Bella whispered, her innocent voice shaking. Chris, cold and emotionless, reassured them that everything was fine. But deep down, he had already made up his mind. Chris sat on the edge of his bed, breathing heavily. His hands were still trembling from what he had just done. The air in the house felt heavy, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. But there was no turning back now. He walked into his daughter's room, standing in the doorway for a moment, watching them sleep. For a fleeting second, he hesitated. Could he really go through with this? But then, a chilling thought crossed his mind: if he let them live, they would grow up knowing what he had done. They would hate him. They would tell the world. And that was something he could not allow. As dawn approached, he loaded his wife's body into his truck. Then, in an act of unimaginable cruelty, he took his daughters along with him. The little girls, still in their pajamas, clung to their father, unaware of what was about to happen. He drove them to an isolated oil site where he worked. One by one, he suffocated them and disposed of their tiny bodies in oil tanks, erasing the last evidence of the innocent lives he had destroyed. As Chris Watts drove away from the oil site, the silence in the truck was deafening. The weight of his unspeakable crimes pressed down on him, yet he forced himself to remain calm. He had done what he thought was necessary, or so he convinced himself. Now, he had to act normal, to pretend as if nothing had happened. When he returned home, the house felt eerily empty. The laughter of his daughters, the voice of his wife, everything was gone. But there was no time to dwell on that. He had to create the illusion of a worried husband. The next morning, he called Shanann's friends, pretending to be concerned when she didn't answer their messages. Then, he called the police, reporting her and the children as missing. Officers arrived at the house, and Chris put on his best performance. Surveillance footage later captured his nervous pacing, his forced expressions of worry. But behind his facade, panic was setting in. News of the disappearance spread quickly. Social media was flooded with posts about the missing family, and the community rallied together, hoping for their safe return. Chris even appeared on television, pleading for his wife and daughters to come back. But those who watched closely noticed something unsettling: his lack of genuine emotion. His words seemed rehearsed, his eyes void of true grief. As investigators dug deeper, inconsistencies in his story emerged. His behavior was odd, his explanations weak. Then came the moment that changed everything: polygraph test results. "You failed," the examiner told him bluntly. The walls around Chris began to close in. Cornered, he spun a new lie, blaming Shanann for the deaths of their daughters. But the truth was far more horrifying. Under immense pressure, he finally confessed. The world watched in shock as the real story unfolded: the cold, calculated murders of his entire family. Chris Watts was arrested, his once perfect life shattered beyond repair. His trial was swift, and the evidence against him overwhelming. Facing life in prison, he was left alone with his thoughts, haunted by the cries of his daughters, by the face of his wife in those final moments. The darkness he had embraced consumed him entirely. To this day, the Watts home remains a chilling reminder of the horrors that took place within its walls, a house that once held love, now tainted by unspeakable evil. What if the ones you trust the most are hiding the darkest secrets?